Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This particular lecture is the following the lecture that we had earlier on about human resources management. I was telling you that the most important resource now for any organization or even for a country is the human resource. And making this use of this human resource is very, very important. The countries that are working on their human resources, the countries which are uh, helping their youth to realize their potentials and direct them towards some productive uses are getting so much advantage. Like, say, for example, in our region, if you look at India, India is so much focused on human resources management. And if you know about this Indian economy, it is treated as a back office for the world. As you know that China is treated as the factory of the world, uh, India is treated as the office of the world. Similarly, other countries, whoever are getting use of their resources, human resources, they are training them, they are directing them towards the right uses. Like, the human resource is like any other resource that you have got in your economy. If you use it properly, like, say, for example, your time, if you manage your time properly, you can achieve a lot of things in your life. Similarly, the organizations and countries and cities and provinces and all these kind of entities use their human resources effectively, they can do wonders. Like, people have got ideas, people have got potentials, people can go and take the countries, their organizations in very, very different directions. If you see the revival of so many organizations all over the world and revival of the countries even all over the world, you would find certain person behind that all revolutions or revivals. And these people basically had got the skills to transform the organizations, companies, countries, and all the entities that they work for. Now, we have already learned about these all theories, that why human resources is important, how this human resources is done, and what actually is the philosophy of human resources management. And we are now basically going to discuss an article that was published in Harvard Business Review. And this particular article has been shared with you through your WhatsApp group. And I have also shared. So we were talking about that the lecture we have had about this human resource management, and now I was telling you that we are going to discuss an article that was published in Harvard Business Review, and the title of that article is interesting. Why do we love to hate HR? Why do we love to hate HR? Why do we love to hate HR? Like, generally, this HR people are not liked by the people in the organizations, because these HR people are sometimes, like, get on their nerves uh, to show the performance, to show the output, and to work. That is why, and that is what in a general sense, people don't like HR people. Like, generally, these HR people decide your salaries, and nobody in the world is happy with his salaries. Like, whatever amount you get from your organization is never enough for you. And similarly, these HR people ask you to do this or that, or don't do this or don't do that. So that actually makes them quite, like, dislike people in the organizations. The organizations, generally the people in the organizations do not generally, like these people, because these people are they work, they actually ask them to work, and they ask them to behave, and ask them to perform, and they generally deduct salaries. They generally penalizes the people in terms of uh, like you know uh, say, for example, salary cuts. And if you want to apply for holidays, you have to talk to the HR people, and that basically is a kind of a problem for you. That if you go for a holiday application and you don't get that holiday application approved, or you don't get those holidays, you generally don't like the people who reject your application. So it is actually generally happens that the people are not in love with HR people. They basically generally they love to hate them. They love to talk about, they love to talk bad about these HR people, because they always, whenever they're sitting together, they talk about the HR people, that their injustice, their unfair treatment of the people, and there are a lot of things that basically they discuss, and a lot of things basically they talk about, which actually are really important for us to understand. That this particular article is a kind of an article that basically tells you that why do we love to hate HR, and actually will explain you that why the people actually from the HR are not loved by the people, and why the people basically like to talk or just like criticize these people. So like if you look at the idea of that, most vocal critics say that HR managers focus too much on administrivia. Administrivia actually means like they actually like prefer routine work, paperwork, and other administrative tasks that are not very important. They basically like involve people into so much paperwork which actually are not needed sometimes, which are not required sometimes, but somehow they are involved more in administrivia and lack vision and strategic insight. Like they are the people who believe in papers, they believe in kind of documentations, and kind of like administration. They don't actually have got strategic insight. As you know, okay, strategic insight का मतलब क्या होता है कि they basically don't take the organizations to the next level. They just follow routine patterns, they follow routine kind of the exercises, and they generally don't basically have got this strategic insight. You can agree or you can disagree with this point, because that is what something the critics say about the HR people. But like you might have got your own understanding of the HR function, that whether this function actually, do you in your view lacks vision or strategic insight or not. Now what actually happens is that HR makes us perform tasks we don't like. Like we don't like work, we don't want to work. Like say for example, be it is a teacher, a lawyer, doctor, or student, we don't like work. We shirk work. We dislike responsibility. We dislike work. Like say for example, at your home, when you are asked to do something, you don't like it. Like say for example, if you are actually like at home and you basically are asked to perform something, you usually like don't like working, and that's what happens when you are working with the organization. Kinza, your camera is on. I have turned off your camera. So they actually make us perform the tasks that we don't like, uh, and generally like they let us don't do what we actually are like to do. Like say for example, एक डिपार्टमेंट का मैनेजर है, अब वो ये समझता है कि एक शख्स को इसके साथ काम करना चाहिए या इस शख्स को इसके साथ काम नहीं करना चाहिए. A person who is running the department cannot decide about it if there is an HR department. What he can the best do is he can recommend, he can send his recommendations. Following or not following that recommendations are in the hands of the HR people. Like say for example, if HR, like say for example, administration of the University of Karachi places some person in our office in the Department of Economics, and we are not satisfied with the performance of that particular person, we cannot move that person on our own. We will have to take the HR on board. We will have to just like request HR to make actually like the movement of this particular person possible, and just like just change, like replace this person with somebody else. And similarly, if we find somebody who is very good, like, and we think like that he can perform very good tasks, but we cannot employ them, we cannot employ him or her, because like we have to go through the HR functions. We have to like request the HR evaluates these people in their way. Like it is not necessary the people you think are good for your work are also be taken as good for work from the HR department. Like HR department uh, sometimes agree with you, and sometimes they don't agree with you. They disagree with you, and this disagreement and agreement basically like is very much like hinders your work. Like say for example, मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि एक शख्स मेरे पास जो काम कर रहा है वो ये काम ना करे, कोई और काम करे, but I can't actually like move him as a manager of that particular kind of a section. What I will have to do is I will have to ask HR to do this, and that is what basically something make it like this make this department very much like hated, that people don't like it, because sometimes they make requests, but these requests are not entertained by these departments. HR actually seems to play a valuable role when companies struggle with labor issues. And generally, आपको पता है कि जब किसी चीज की जरूरत पड़ती है तो उसकी अहमियत का अंदाजा होता है, जब जरूरत नहीं होती तो लोग उसकी अहमियत का अंदाजा उसके पास नहीं होता. लाइक से फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर आपके मुल्क में बहुत ज्यादा अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट है, you have got so many people who are willing to work, who are basically available for work, you don't will not be looking towards HR department. HR becomes useless for you. You have got a lot of people, like you can negotiate salaries with them, they are willing to work at any salary. लाइक से फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर आपके मुल्क में इस वक्त जो है वो जो कंडीशंस हैं, इकोनॉमिक कंडीशंस हैं, वो इतनी ज़्यादा ख़राब है पाकिस्तान में जनरली, दैट इफ़ यू एडवर्टाइज अ जॉब and you ask for a person like who has got qualification of intermediate or BCom or BA or bachelor's, you will find even applications of the PhDs in those areas. You will find MS, you will find MSc people, like you will find MPhil people, you will find people who have done diplomas and degrees from all over the universities in your country, and it makes a lot easier for the organizations to choose and refuse. But this HR become very important when the things are not as good as as good in the sense, like from the point of view of the organizations, of course. ये जो condition मैं बता रहा हूँ आपको, this is not good from the perspective of the people, from the employees, but that condition is very good in the perspective or in the view of the employers. Employers don't need HR in good times, but they need HR in bad times. That's what basically this particular point number 3 says, that HR seems to play a valuable role when companies struggle with labor issues, and in other peaceful times, people wonder what HR is doing anyway. Like say, for example, similarly, if the people in the organizations go on strike. Now, if the HR is good at negotiations, if the HR can negotiate this particular kind of a problem, so you would like to have this HR. But if the people are working smoothly, you have got a lot of people to work, the people don't mind having and getting any salary. You can cut, you can reduce, you can actually change their shift times, you can increase their number of hours, you can do anything, because these people are forced to work. And why are they forced to work? Because there is so much unemployment, so many people are looking for the job. If they leave the job, so many else people will come and take their jobs. So by separating effective from worthless, HR leaders can secure huge payoffs of their organizations. And they basically also, like the HR people basically try to create a divide, or they try to distinguish between the people who are worthy and the people who are not worthy. The people they separate the effective from the worthless, and they basically in this way they can be very, very useful for the organization. Now okay, so these all are very good examples that you people have shared, and they are very first-hand kind of information that you people have shared, because since you have come across with the functionalities of these HR department, and everybody just hates that. Like say for example, as Sadaf was telling, if the HR people, even she was not deciding anything, what she was doing, that she was just communicating the messages of the HR people to the general faculty and the general organizational members. So they actually knew that Sadaf is not taking those decisions, but still they started hating Sadaf. Sadaf ऐसा ही था ना?
बिल्कुल ऐसे ही था सर।
जी जी, तो ये एक्चुअली अगर आप सोचें कि द पीपल हु आर रियली एचआर पीपल एंड हु आर डूइंग दिस, तो उनसे लोग कितना हेट करेंगे. So
बहुत
this
ही
is जी जी, so this is what this article is about, कि why do we love to hate HR, and that is what something happens. ये जो है वो organizations भी और जाहिर है कि employees भी, they are not happy with the functionalities of the HR. Like see for example, this is another topic in this particular article is the personnel pendulum. Pendulum आपको पता है कि something that goes right and right and left, और वो चलता रहता है pendulum, like keeps moving. तो जब लेबर शॉर्टेजेस होते हैं तो ह्यूमन रिसोर्सेज प्रैक्टिसेस बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाती हैं, और these human resources practices basically play a very, very important role when you have got shortages. जिस तरह मैंने अभी आपसे बताया कि आपको जब आपके घर में आपके मासी जो काम करती है, जो मेड काम करती है, आपको अगर पता हो कि कोई और मेड आपको नहीं मिलेगी, तो that becomes very important that the people, suppose आपके कोई एम्प्लॉयर है जो एचआर वाले हैं जो कि इनको एम्प्लॉय करते हैं, उनकी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंस आपको नजर आएगी, क्योंकि वो आपको एम्प्लॉय करके देंगे, वो आपको अरेंज करके देंगे, वो आपको सब कुछ करके देंगे। तो इसके अलावा जो लाइन मैनेजर्स होते हैं, आपको मैंने बताया था कि लाइन मैनेजर्स आर दोज मैनेजर्स हु बेसिकली वर्क एट द डिपार्टमेंटल लेवल। They are responsible for the operational things. So they basically complain that the personnel departments were getting in their way of better performance, which they thought could be achieved with the drive system threatening workers and sometimes even hitting them if they fail to measure up. The thing is कि देखें, बहुत सारी चीजों में जो एचआर है वो आपके लोगों को सपोर्ट भी कर रहा होता है, उसको ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के मैनेजमेंट से बचा भी रहा होता है। HR basically supports you in so many instances as well. जाहिर है HR का काम है सैलरी डिसाइड करना, and nobody will be ever happy with the salary that is decided for him or her, because everybody wants or evaluates him or herself a lot better than actually the HR is evaluating them. So the business, that's what basically happens. And similarly, जो organizations हैं, they cannot misbehave with you, because the HR actually plays on both sides. Basically, they also try to safeguard you in some of the instances when basically the organization get harsh to you. Even if, like, say for example, if the organization wants to fire you off, the HR can save you some time, because they don't have got any reasons, and they don't basically cannot go against law. They know the law and they try to implement the laws into the organizations, and they are responsible for it. So the business leaders also uh, a lot of stock, they don't put a lot of stock in HR, because 2001-2008 में जो है वो जब रिसेशंस थे, तो बहुत सारे लोग मौजूद होते, तो एचआर का डिपार्टमेंट नहीं रखते थे, उनको बहुत सारे लोग वैसे ही मिल जाते थे, ट्रेंड लोग मिल जाते थे, क्योंकि बहुत सारी जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं वो जो लोगों को निकालती थी वो ऑलरेडी ट्रेंड लोग होते थे। जिस तरह मैं भी आपको एक सीईओ का, जिस तरह ये 13 पॉइंट अगर आप देखें कि एक सीईओ ने कहा था एक दफा कि व्हाई शुड आई ट्रेन पीपल व्हेन माय कॉम्पिटिटर्स आर विलिंग टू डू इट फॉर मी। जिस तरह मिसाल के तौर पर आप देखें कि अब यहाँ पर क्या होता है कि जिस तरह मैं एक कराची यूनिवर्सिटी में जॉब करता हूँ, मुझे कराची यूनिवर्सिटी ने पीएचडी के लिए भेजा, और बहुत सारे जो लोग हैं पाकिस्तान में उनको सरकारी यूनिवर्सिटीज ने पीएचडी के लिए भेजा और उनको ट्रेनिंग्स के लिए भेजा फॉर तमाम ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड। एंड व्हेन दे रिटर्न्ड, डू यू नो व्हाट दे डिड? they basically left, they actually they lost them to the private sector. प्राइवेट सेक्टर वालों के पास, जिस तरह मिसाल के तौर पर देखें, प्राइवेट जो यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं उनके वो पैसा सैलरीज बहुत ज्यादा दे रही हैं, लेकिन उनके पास वो दे आर सेविंग मनी ऑन ट्रेनिंग पीपल। they should have got say to this, like say for example, why should we train people when our competitors are willing to do it for us? तो ये बेसिकली बड़ा उस वक्त एचआर की जरूरत उनको नहीं होती, उनके पास इतनी कोई ट्रेनिंग की जरूरत नहीं है, उनके पास लोगों की ट्रेनिंग, क्योंकि और जगह से वो ट्रेन होकर आ रहे हैं। अगर आपके मुल्क में जो है वो शॉर्टेजेस हैं या प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, इस तरह से फॉर एग्जांपल जिस तरह सरकारी नौकरी है, सरकारी नौकरी में जो है वो जाहिर है कि आपको सैलरीज कम है, प्राइवेट सेक्टर्स में सैलरीज ज्यादा हैं, तो पीपल लाइक टू स्विच फ्रॉम द प्राइवेट सेक्टर टू द पब्लिक सेक्टर टू द प्राइवेट सेक्टर। तो ये बेसिकली जाहिर है इन दैट सिचुएशंस, अगर आपके मुल्क में बहुत इन्फ्लेशन हो, बहुत सारे ले ऑफ्स हो, बहुत सारे सरकारी इदारे पैसे खर्च कर रहे हो, तो जो प्राइवेट इदारे हैं वो अपने एचआर फंक्शंस पे पैसे नहीं खर्च करते, बिकॉज दे थिंक दैट इफ समबडी एल्स इज डूइंग वर्क फॉर देम, व्हाई शुड दे कीप अ लॉन्ग list of people in the HR department. So supervisors, line managers were tasked along with other duties to perform the task of HR. So they resultantly complained about the distraction they created in their main tasks. तो बाज़ औक़ात ऐसा होता है कि supervisors are not happy with the HR departments, because जब HR होता है और supervisors होते हैं, इनके interest बाज़ औक़ात conflicting होते हैं. So they basically sometimes they actually, the HR also create distractions into the work of the supervisor. Like say for example, एक supervisor है, एक line manager है, वो ये चाहता है कि ये शख्स ये काम करे और ये शख्स ये काम ना करे, लेकिन अगर एचआर उसको नहीं वो करता, उसको एंडोर्स करता और एचआर उसकी परमिशन नहीं देता, तो ना तो आप ऐसा कर सकते हैं कि जो शख्स किसी को काम पे उस जगह पे लगा लें या उस जगह को काम से हटा दें, तो दैट बेसिकली कैन कॉज अ लॉट ऑफ ट्रबल एंड अ लॉट ऑफ टेंशन बिटवीन द ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस मैनेजमेंट एंड एचआर इटसेल्फ। देखिए एक एचआर बेसिकली is like is in trouble from both sides. लोगों के साथ भी उसकी trouble होती है और मैनेजमेंट के साथ भी उसकी trouble होती है। मैनेजमेंट wants it to perform tasks and reduce the cost of laborers and employees, और जो लेबर्स होते हैं वो कहते हैं कि like they are not paying us good salaries, they are not helping us actually making good money, and that's what basically they always complain for. So the HR people basically get stuck between the two parties. The one party is the organizational managers, and the other party is the employees themselves. Organization के जो managers हैं, they don't like HR because the HR come in their way. Like if they want to do something, HR does not let them do. Similarly, employees are not happy and they love to hate HR because HR basically like decides their salaries, which actually is not good. Like they always think like it's not good for them. Sometimes they deduct salaries, sometimes they ask you what you are not willing to do, sometimes they force you to do something which actually you are not willing to do. So in those all situations, the HR gets stuck between the two parties. The one party is the of course the organizational management, and the second party is the are the employees themselves. Now, what should HR be doing now? What should HR be doing now? Now, what actually the HR is trained for? The HR managers, the personnel managers are trained to help the organizations and the people themselves to make the company grow. So HR can actually play a very important role, and there are some kind of steps that they can follow, and they can improve the working of the organizations, and they can improve the organization. Like say for example, the first thing first is that set the agenda. And like set the agenda means they should have got their reasons, they should have got their objectives, they should have got their targets. A few years ago, the head of HR at a leading corporation, someone who had survived lots of restructuring, was asked about the key of his success. He said, I do whatever the CEO wants. देखिए, HR जो ये जो एक HR के शख्स के बारे में लिखा हुआ है यहाँ पर कि वो HR का मैनेजर था, वो बहुत सारी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में लोगों को निकाला गया और रखा गया, लेकिन उस शख्स की नौकरी जो है वो कभी भी खत्म नहीं हुई. जब उससे पूछा गया कि आपकी क्या राज है सक्सेस का, व्हाई हैव यू बीन एबल टू सर्वाइव विद द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, ही सेड आई डू व्हाटएवर द सीईओ वांट्स. देखें, आपका क्या ख्याल है, ये अच्छी स्ट्रेटेजी है एचआर डिपार्टमेंट की या किसी की कि वो काम वही करे जो उसके बॉसेस चाहते हैं? क्या ख्याल है आपका? अगर आप वो काम करें जो आपके बॉसेस चाहते हैं तो यू कैन सेव योर जॉब, बट यू कैन नॉट लाइक हेल्प योर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. ठीक है, आपके जो सीईओज हैं, आपके जो सुपीरियर्स हैं, दे समटाइम्स वांट यू टू डू समथिंग दैट इज नॉट, or that is in the conflict of the interest of the organization. Sometimes like say for example, agar as a teacher, like say for example, hum jo as a teacher hum students ko we start giving a lot of marks and a lot of numbers, a lot of like scores into their exams, and just to make them happy, of course that will not help you. आपको marks तो मिल जाएंगे, लेकिन इन marks के मिलने से क्या होगा कि you will not be able to perform. और अगर आप जब जॉब के लिए जाएंगे तो आपके पास मार्क्स तो बहुत सारे होंगे, लेकिन आपके पास कोई स्किल नहीं होगी. तो you cannot survive by making people happy. You have to do what actually is needed for you, what you have been trained for, what you have been asked for. So you basically should work in the interest of organization, and you should not follow the CEO only, the chief executive officer of the company. The CEOs and other operating executives are rarely experts on workplace issues. They are not aware of it. देखिए, जो आपका काम है वो आप जानते हैं, CEOs नहीं जानते हैं. CEO is trained for something else. You are trained for something else. So they often have no relevant experience now that fewer, like say for example, जिस तरह हमारे पास कल एक इस्लामिक बैंकिंग का सेमिनार हुआ था, और इस्लामिक बैंकिंग के सेमिनार में आपने जो देखा था वो बेसिकली जाहिर है वो इकोनॉमिक इश्यूज पे बात कर रहे थे. लेकिन अगर मैं आपको इस्लामिक बैंकिंग सेमिनार के बारे में बताऊं, इस्लामिक बैंकिंग के बारे में बताऊं, देखिए इस्लामिक बैंक में एक डिवीजन होता है जो कि कहलाता है शरिया एडवाइजर्स का. जो शरिया एडवाइजर्स हैं, दे आर द पीपल हु एडवाइज द ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस ऑन इश्यूज रिलेटेड टू शरिया. Like say for example, if an organization like the bank wants to launch a product, the Sharia advisors evaluate that product on the basis of religious injunctions, and they tell to the organizations whether religiously this is right or wrong product. If they think like that this is right, they actually tell them that this is right. If they think like this is not correct, and it actually has got a conflict with Islam. So they basically communicate accordingly. But what would happen if these people just say, or just say whatever the CEO says? जो कंपनी की जो मैनेजमेंट है वो ट्रेंड नहीं है इस्लामिक इश्यूज पर. आप एज ए शरिया एडवाइजर या आप एज ए मुस्लिम एक्सपर्ट, एज ए इस्लामिक एक्सपर्ट, you are responsible for making these all products halal and making all these products sharia compliant. But what if the sharia advisor, to make their CEOs happy, do whatever their CEOs like? तो अगर ऐसा होगा तो क्या होगा? If they do whatever the CEOs like or CEOs want them to do, है भाई?
सर जो कोई यानी सीईओ कह रहा है हमने सिर्फ वही हम कर रहे हैं तो काम नहीं चलेगा सर.
जी बिल्कुल. देखिए काम इस सेंस में नहीं चलेगा. देखिए शरिया एडवाइजर का जो काम है वो शरिया एडवाइजरी, अगर सीईओ को सारा शरिया के बारे में पता हो तो ऐसी सूरत में वो शरिया एडवाइजर को रखेगा ही नहीं. तो शरिया एडवाइजर को रखने का मकसद ये है कि वो शरिया के हिसाब से उसको जो है वो गाइड करे. लेकिन बिल्कुल इसी तरीके से जो एचआर डिपार्टमेंट के लोग हैं उनको इसलिए रखा जाता है क्योंकि वो एचआर के ट्रेंड है. वो उनको दे शुड नॉट डू वट एवर द सीईओ वांट्स देम टू डू. They should also be using their knowledge. They should also be using their own expertise, which actually can be a lot better, because the CEOs who are asking them to do something which actually is not professional, or which is something that you should not do, if you do that, you will give more harm to your organizations than benefit. ठीक है ना? आपके ज़हन में अगर बीच में कोई क्वेश्चन आए तो you people can ask.
Sir, I want to add some points here.
Yes, please.
सर मैंने भी काम किया एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ, नाम मैं मेंशन नहीं करूँगी. मैं 3 ब्रांचेस को अकेली संभालती थी. 43 अराउंड वॉलंटियर्स टीचर्स मेरे अंडर थी. मगर सर मैं बाहर वाला रूल फॉलो कर रही थी. जैसे कि हमारे यहाँ पे पाकिस्तान में हम ये करते हैं मोस्टली कि इसका स्केल मुझसे छोटा है. अगर मासी है तो उसका कोई लेवल ही नहीं है. ड्राइवर है तो उसको कुछ नहीं है. अगर हम ये नहीं सोचते कि अगर मासी आके सफाई नहीं करेगी तो मेरे रूम जिस सीट पे मैं बैठी हूँ 10 लोग मेरे आगे बैठते हैं वो लेवल रहेगा मेरे रूम का. तो ये चीज जो है मैंने एक टीम वर्क, एक प्रपोजल बनाया हुआ था. टीम वर्क पे मैंने ज्यादा फोकस दिया था. और दूसरी बात, इवन उस आंटी को भी शुरू में मुझसे पहले जो संभाल रही थी काफी इश्यूज थे, सफाई नहीं हो रहा है, लेकिन जो है मैंने उसको ये बताया था कि हर किसी का अपना अपना लेवल पे अपना एक मकाम है और काम ही बेहतरीन चीज है. इंस्टेड ऑफ आप किसी के आगे हाथ फैला के ले रहे हो, इससे ये चीज बेहतर है. इनडायरेक्टली साइकोलॉजिकली मैंने ये चीजें अपने टीम को बता दी थी तो बहुत इजी हो गया था. और मैं बिल्कुल बीच में ही थी क्योंकि मुझे वहां भी जवाब देना था और मेरे अंडर जो लोग हैं उनको भी संभालना था. तो मेरे लिए खुद ब खुद काम इजी हो जाता था. सम टाइम कुछ चीजें ऊपर नीचे हो जाती थी तो इनडायरेक्टली वो सॉर्ट आउट हो जाते थे. और जो मेरे ऊपर हेड थे वो भी, मतलब मेरी कोई मजबूरी आ गई थी, 3 मंथ से मैं कह रही थी कि मुझे जॉब छोड़नी है, तो वो मुझे जबरदस्ती रोक रहे थे कि किसी तरह मतलब रुक जाए. क्यों? डिपेंड करता है, जो बीच का पर्सन है उसी पे डिपेंड करता है कि वो किस तरह लेके चल रहा होता है. लेकिन
तो
सर
आप
अगर
अपनी मर्जी
हमारे
से चीजें कर रही होती थी या उनको मतलब जाहिर है उनकी मैनेजमेंट को
उनको बता के कर रही होती थी. उनको वो तरीका होता है सर कि आप किस तरह से सामने वाले के बिहेवियर को समझ के उनको सजेशन दे सकते हो. उस जो भी प्रॉब्लम है उसको सॉर्ट आउट करने का तरीका होता है.
तो प्रोफेशनली अगर कभी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट आता था, लाइक से फॉर एग्जांपल आई एम जस्ट आस्किंग दिस क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम यू, प्रोफेशनल डीलिंग में अगर कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट आता था कि आपकी जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है वो आपसे कहती थी इस तरह करें, लेकिन प्रोफेशनली द रिक्वायरमेंट वर डिफरेंट, व्हाट यू यूज्ड टू डू?
मैं करती थी सर, उनको दिखा देती थी कि इंस्टेड ऑफ दिस वी मे यूज दिस वे. सर इस तरह का जो सिचुएशन बनाया हुआ था कि ये भी है, ठीक है, भले वो मुझसे बड़े हैं, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के बड़े हैं. मैं कहती थी कि मैं ऑर्डर नहीं दे रही हूँ लेकिन सजेशन दे रही हूँ कि इससे बेहतर ये ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए ये वे. जब एक काम, कई दफा ऐसा हुआ सर, जब एक काम शॉर्ट टर्म में इस तरीके से बेहतर हो सकता है तो हम खामखा अपनी टीम पे क्यों बर्डन डालें. मैंने उनको ये बताया था कि अगर हम टीम को जज नहीं करते, उनको बर्डन नहीं डालते हैं, तो फिर वो ये हो इस तरह सॉर्ट आउट। अगर किसी का सैलरी का, ज्यादातर जो मैंने देखा वो सैलरी इशू आता है कि ये हमारे सैलरी नहीं बढ़ा रहे हैं, हमारा काम उनसे ज्यादा है, ये सबसे बड़ा मसला था। इसका हमने ये हल निकाला था कि अ, उनको जो है एक्स्ट्रा जो है चीजें दे देते थे, कि कभी 5% पर आ रही है कुछ, मतलब कुछ मंथ्स का ईयरली बेस पे हमने कुछ दे दिया कि किसी तरह मतलब हेल्प करनी है उनकी। जो बहुत अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रहा है उनको अलग से जो है एनवलप दे दिए कुछ इस तरह का ईयरली बेस पे, क्योंकि बीच का पर्सन है, उसी की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है। ऊपर का
राइट।
बंदा है, उसको नहीं पता होता कि नीचे कौन कितना काम, बहुत सारे कामचोर लोग भी आते थे जो मतलब बढ़ा चढ़ा के आगे सामने होते थे, लेकिन बैक पे उनका काम कुछ नहीं होता था। तो जो एचआर है उसी की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है कि वो किस तरह डील कर रहा है,
राइट।
इनको भी
राइट।
देखना उनको भी देखना, और हर चीज का, बिकॉज there I think that I am answerable to Allah, that's why I sort out each and everything in very
ऑलराइट।
deeply level.
All right,
So
Shahada, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, thank you,
yeah,
thank you very much for the comments.
thank you sir.
And like of course, they were helpful in the sense of course, you were telling your first-hand experience with the organization that you were working with. तो मुकद्दस, I'm sorry, Tamina, अगर आपका ये sound problem है तो please देखिएगा, because I think other people don't have got sound problem. अच्छा, तो it's very like true, what actually the Shaida was basically telling us. Okay, you have to strike a balance between what people want from you and what organizations actually demand from you. But like you should deal things professionally. Your profession, like say for example, as I was the example perhaps of Sharia advisor is very pertinent to this kind of a situation, that if the Sharia advisor thinks that this particular product is not Sharia compliant, he should not only endorse it for the sake of making the CEOs happy of that organization or the bosses happy for that organization. He should deal with these all things professionally, and he should basically decide that what is good for the organization, what is not good for the organization. That's what is the idea. So you should be setting up the agenda. So they should be telling, like say for example, look at the point number 23. The HR team can show these executives what they should care about and why. That means articulating a point of view on every people related topic relevant to the business. For instance, layoffs. आपका जो ले ऑफ्स हैं, ले ऑफ का मतलब आप लोग समझते हैं, ले ऑफ का मतलब होता है कि किसी को ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से निकाल देना, किसी को ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से फारिग कर देना. So according to the report published near the beginning of 2008 recession, only about a third of HR departments said they were consulted on companies decisions about which people to go. लेकिन ये बड़ा मुश्किल होता है क्योंकि एचआर जब बाज़ औक़ात एचआर को जब बाईपास किया जाता है, so things can go very very wrong. Like say for example, during those recessions when the organizations were facing trouble, they actually didn't consult their HR departments, and these HR departments even didn't know. ये आप लोगों को सबको प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है भाई आवाज का? सना भी बोल रही हैं, तमीना भी बोल रही हैं, मुकद्दस मलिक के नाम से जो है.
नो सर।
आप जो देखेंगे प्लीज, आप लोग प्लीज देख लें इसको कि अगर आप लोगों के साथ ही प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है तो आप लोग प्लीज इसको अपना माइक्स वगैरह, अपने सॉरी स्पीकर्स वगैरह को देखें, या फिर जो है वो आप अपने कनेक्शन को दोबारा आप रिस्टोर कर लें. So that is stunning lack of influence in an area where HR has the most expertise of any function. तो जाहिर है कि ये इसमें HR से कंसल्ट करना चाहिए उनको, और अगर HR से वो कंसल्ट नहीं कर रहे हैं तो जाहिर है HR इसमें रिस्पॉन्सिबल नहीं है. The HR should basically can guide accordingly, but sometimes organizations don't consult with HR. Recruiting. HR understands the structured interviews, help identify the best candidates. Yet many organizations allow managers with no training in interviewing to go with their gut. तो बहरहाल ये बहुत दफ़ा organizations भी basically problem create कर रही होती है, वो lay off करती हैं without taking HR into confidence. They recruit people and they just put people into the boards who are not trained for this particular kind of the work. And similarly, the HR actually recognize that flexibility in the working arrangements are good for the organizations, but the organizations don't go for them. And that's what basically we are telling, there are so many things that the HR does or the companies do. They basically don't take HR on board. They don't consult HR, or rather some of the times the HR has got a different view, but organizations follow a different thing. So performance management, there is a need to create metrics for evaluation of the performance. HR can explain can this to be managed and how it can be helpful for the organization. So these are the things basically we have been talking about. What is the way forward? So HR's one of the biggest difficulties has been supporting business strategy, because it is such a moving target these days. There are a lot of troubles HR faces because of the recessions, in depressions and activity, higher economic activity. Companies generally have don't have got long term plans with the straightforward talent requirements. So that basically they need to have got this kind of a long-term plans, and HR can develop talent head of problems with regulations and turnover, build corporate culture, and address moral problems. So प्लीज अपने माइक्स को बंद रखिए. हसन आपका माइक ऑन है. हसन वाजिद. Okay, so okay, so if you look at the lecture number 4, this lecture number 4 is about the leadership traits and skills. Leadership is an important quality that managers should have, and this is, I think, it is the most important quality, that if you really want to take or want people to follow you, you have to behave like a leader. You cannot make people follow you. You cannot make people uh, just like kind of a worship you, in the sense that they do whatever you ask them to do, and you take the things, basically take work from them. So that basically is something that the leaders can do. Like, say for example, if you just think about the leadership, the biggest leader in this world that basically has led the whole nations of Muslim Ummah was Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you think about the way he has lived, the way he has led Muslims, it was the wonderful, wonderful thing. And we cannot find any other example which actually are as perfect as of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that how he led the nation. He actually he started from nowhere, and what he did during 23 years of his age, when he got this all when he just was declared as a prophet of Allah. And after that 23 years he transformed the world, and the impact of that leadership will remain here forever, up to the Qiyamah. That actually is something. And he was the leader who led the world, and he basically led all the basically the sects, all the people everywhere in the world. And the way he led it, we don't find any kind of example of it. So the leadership is very different, that if you think about the time when Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came in this world and he started preaching Islam, he was amongst all the enemies. He was amongst all the people who were disbelievers. He was amongst those people who were not willing to trust him as a prophet, and they were not willing to take him serious. And he was amongst the people who were basically very, very, very illiterate. Although at that point of time, their literacy, they thought the literacy was their main skill, but somehow they actually were not able to understand the way these all Arabs were living was pathetic, but Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, within the span of few years, changed every single thing. And now basically he is the leader for all the people coming into the world up to Qiyamah, and the people basically are bound to follow him as a leader. So, but we are actually talking from the perspective of an organization. So we will try to take examples from the worldly leaders, that how the people basically lead, like what Pakistan lack, what Pakistan actually has got the problem with, that Pakistan has got all the resources, but we don't have got leaders. We lack leaders. We lack the people who are truly able to lead us, who are truly able to basically take us into certain direction. And we are actually having trouble with that. We actually are, the people have tried so many people to become or to make them leaders, but no one so far has been proved as a leader, who could lead the nation. Like say for example, Muhammad Ali Jinnah led the nation, and afterwards we actually have got a very long gap or very long kind of space between the people basically who are actually coming into the government and their leadership qualities. We do not find them, or we do not see them, or we do not actually look at them, and they are not basically leaders. They are just generally the people who basically are working for their own interests. They are the people who are actually not leading the nations. They are not leading them, and they don't have got the skills to lead them. But somehow we have got examples, uh, you know like uh, uh, where the leaders who actually can be termed as leaders transformed very big organizations. Like say for example, if you I was when my was doing when I was we were doing masters, we did a project on CCBPL. CCBPL is a Coca-Cola Bottlers Private Limited. At that point of time, before that, the CCBPL was at the verge of collapse. But one particular leader from Vietnam actually came, and he transformed every single thing into the Coca-Cola Bottlers Private Limited. And we happened to go to interview him for his leadership skills. And we found him, what we found about him, that he was a wonderful leader. And what he did, basically, he transformed the whole organization. हम उनके पास जब मिलने के लिए गए तो बेसिकली वी फाउंड कि ही यूज्ड टू स्टैंड ऑन द गेट एवरी मॉर्निंग, जब वो आते थे, बॉटल्स आती थी और जाते थे, and he used to control things by on his own. And he was taking us to the route, like he was actually he just taking to the tour of the whole uh, factory area. So when wherever he was going, he knew everybody by name. He knew the problems the person was facing, so he was keep asking everybody with his name or her name, that how is she or he doing, and what has happened with the problems they were facing earlier on. So he was actually kind of a leader who led them from the front. He was even basically he even used to regulate or control the traffic of the trucks that were coming to the industry and they were leaving the industry. So the term leadership connotes image of a powerful, dynamic individual who command victorious armies. Like we have got a lot of examples in which the people basically have led victorious armies, direct corporate empires from atop gleaming skyscrapers, shape the course of a nation. Like say for example, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he shaped the course of a Muslims nation, and we actually were able to get a separate nation or separate a piece of land. You can imagine that how the life of the people is who are living in India. They are beaten, they are actually killed, they are actually treated very very unfairly for very very petty reasons and for very very small reasons. So Pakistanis should be thankful to Muhammad Ali Jinnah that after of course Allah, that that he was able to get lead the nation and set the course of the nation of Pakistan. So leadership is such a mysterious process as well as one of the touches everyone's life. It is a very, very important thing. Now, some of the questions which basically are really important, that why did certain leaders, say for example, Gandhi, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Mao Zedong, inspire such intense favor and dedication? There are so many people still favor and are dedicated to these all leaders. Like say for example, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Nawaz Sharif here, say for example, if you talk about these all people, I'm not talking that they were actually leader, or I'm not declaring them as a leader or not leader. What I'm trying to just tell you is that how big followings these people have. These peoples are followed by millions and millions of people, and people look towards them for the solution of their problems. How did certain leaders, Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, built great empires? There have been so many leaders, like say for example, you are watching these days Artogol and Carlos Usman dramas, and they basically, you find that these people were the people who led their nations from the darkness of this living openly in the open hearts to living like in a better place. So they are basically have taken the nations out of the problem. And like say for example Nelson Mandela, and there are so many people basically you can name them who basically took their nations out from the darkness of the cruelty to the brightness of the day. So why did some rather undistinguished people, for example Hitler, Claudius Caesar, rise to proportions of great power? Like Adolf Hitler didn't have got anything very unique, but somehow he emerged as a big name in the history because of the things basically he did. Why were certain leaders, for example, Winston Churchill from the US, Indira Gandhi, suddenly deposed despite their apparent power and record of successful accomplishment? How were they able to accomplish that much? And why do some leaders have loyal followers who are willing to sacrifice their lives? Like say, for example, अब अगर आप सिंध में जाएं और आप उनसे कहें कि आप वोट किसको देंगे, तो जाहिर है जनरली द पीपल हैव गॉट द व्यू कि जान जो है वो अल्लाह को देनी है, लेकिन वोट जो है वो भुट्टो को देना है. So this is what basically is the loyal following, and that basically is something that basically people do and who are willing to sacrifice their lives. There are so many people who want to die for them. Like they just bring in the between them and the terrorists, say for example, they basically like do not let them die, they basically die at the place of them. So this actually the people basically who have got that following, to that basically is something very unique. Like say for example what happened in Turkey some years ago, that in Turkey also the military powers tried to take over the Turkey. But what people did, do you know what people did? What people in Turkey did when the Turkey basically was like the Turkey's army was trying to take over the Kremlin as a direction, like as a so do you know that? Adia, do you want to say something? You have raised your hand.
No, sir.
All right, all right. So why some leaders have got that much following? बहुत सारे लोग हैं इस वक्त फॉलोइंग है आजकल. तो अगर आप ट्विटर्स वगैरह पे देखें तो बहुत सारे जो म्यूजिशियंस हैं उनकी बहुत ज्यादा फॉलोइंग है. लेकिन ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड द लीडर्स बेसिकली हैव गॉट वेरी बिग फॉलोइंग. व्हाई पीपल आर विलिंग टू गिव लाइफ फॉर देम? बहुत सारे ऐसे लीडर्स होते हैं जिनके लिए लोग अपनी जिंदगी देना चाहते हैं और दे एक्चुअली सेक्रीफाइस देयर लाइव्स फॉर देयर लाइफ टू सेव देयर लाइव्स. सो दीज लीडर्स आर वेरी यूनिक. दे बेसिकली हैव गॉट वेरी मच पावर्स. They basically have got a lot of influence on the people as well. So if you look at the definition of leadership, how this leadership is defined, the leadership is defined in terms of traits, the abilities, the way they basically do things, behaviors, influence, interaction patterns, role relationships, and occupation of an administrative position. Leadership is defined in terms of their skills, their traits, their behaviors, their influence on the people, how they interact with the other people and how they interact with other things, what role they play into the relationships, and the occupation of an administrative post. Like say for example if you are a prime minister of the a country, basically you can be a leader of that particular nation and you can prove to be a leader. More formally, leadership is the ability of an individual to influence, motivate, and enable others to contribute towards the effectiveness and success of the organizations. So this is the basic definition, that the leadership is the ability that if you are able to influence people, influence in the sense like you are able to motivate people to do what they are not generally willing to do. You just motivate them, you influence them, you basically create an influence on them. Like say for example अगर आप किसी एक म्यूजिशियन को, किसी एक एक्टर को फॉलो करते हैं, तो जिस तरह के वो बाल कटवाता है उस तरह के आप बाल कटवाते हैं, जिस तरह के वो कपड़े पहनता है उस तरह के आप कपड़े पहनते हैं, जिस तरह से वो बात करता है उस तरीके से आप बात करना चाहते हैं. So that is what the influence people have got on the other people. So the basically leadership quality is the ability of an individual to have got influence, and they motivate people. Like say for example Muhammad Ali Jinnah led Muslims to get a separate nation,
what he did, he basically motivated people to just come out of their houses and just fight for the freedom and enable others to contribute towards the effectiveness and success of organizations. And the leaders basically provide the level playing field, and they provide the room for the other people to cooperate and just perform what their organization is asking them to perform.